plugged in?
Yeah, it's let's see, let's try that again. Okay, that makes another work. Okay, thank you. So, I don't know. So thanks to Nicholas and Michael for inviting me to present my work here. It's been great working with everyone, and um, and they suggested that I talk a little bit about what I do, and so I come more from an improvisers and music background, and the visuals are kind of things that I've been working on more recently. So usually I like the things I like to work with are things like I like forms and movement that have this very organic look to them, and also and I like the forms to be unstable, to morph and change, and kind of in for example in natural phenomena, things are hardly ever just one shape or form, and they tend to change for all kinds of different reasons. And when I hear music played by musicians that I really enjoy, there's some of this, I don't want to call it synesthesia, because that's a very specific thing, and so the things that I like to see, I guess, when I hear these very tactile and timbrally rich gestures that good musicians make, and I guess that's kind of the visuals are kind of an attempt to, for me to, capture, some of these things that I maybe see in my mind's eye, and so I don't know. So the first two pieces actually react. The animations actually react automatically to the audio from the two musicians, and demonstrate a little bit of the software, less in a more um, obvious way if anyone is interested. So. Okay. So, for example, the any requests? For example, the first piece is let's see, because actually, hang on, I have to turn the oh, that's right. You guys can't see what I'm doing.
No, it's perfectly clear.
Good. So let's see, are we getting sound? Yes, we are. Okay. So the sound's coming in, it's really not that, I'm not sure how much to say here, but if you guys want, if there's anything you guys want to hear more about, just let me know. So for example, the first piece is, this is what it's doing. It's actually based on, it's actually based on a, let's see, are we working here? Let me make this a bit small, okay. It's actually based on a software that simulates the flocking of birds. The code base came from Kyle McDonald, who does some really amazing stuff. And then I kind of did these horrible things to the code to get it to do what I wanted to do. But the idea is that the two flocks of the dots are birds, are virtual birds, and then the way the movement is actually manipulated is they look like flocks of birds, and then each musician actually controls one of the flocks, one of the colors. So for example, if Lothar, would you like to? Okay, so obviously Lothar has the red flock, and then the Chris has the yellow flock, and so you cannot really control the details of what the dots are doing, but you can kind of get them to do, you can kind of affect the larger shapes of how they move. So for example, it's not very visible in that light, right? Let me go to the yellow. Well, now it's not very visible at all. Oops, sorry. I haven't even been drinking. Let's try that again. Okay. So for example, the yellow is more. Okay. So again, you get structure when there's activity in the audio signal, and then if there's no audio signal, you get nothing. So that's really all the musicians are playing with, and they're really, again, you can't really control exactly where the dots appear or where the how they move, but then the musicians kind of play. You're really improvising spatially with the animation. So that's the first piece. Any, yeah.
Did the musicians did some sort of practicing with this special software before, or was it just looking and trying to figure out what was going on, or was it really a practicing session, or more than one practicing session before this gig today?
Well, Chris only saw it from like 7 o'clock probably, and then Lothar had we had a little we looked at this a little bit yesterday. Well, early, I think it was yesterday afternoon, and then and just a very casually. So yeah, but again, you can't really practice in the sense that you're trying to get it to do very specific things because it does so much on its own already. So
What are you adjusting as they go along?
okay. I should have read the code again so I can answer that question precisely. But so it's first it's reacting to on off whether the musician's playing or not, and so when the musician starts playing and there's continuous activity, so the number of birds begin to multiply, and so there's also and then there's a very simple analysis that tries to figure out whether the musicians are playing fast or slow, and that affects the speed of the birds. And then there's also, and it also affects, I believe, how much attention each bird is paying to the birds around it. Because if if a bird is paying a lot of attention to what's around the other birds around it, then you get a lot of structure. You get kind of these linear. You get kind of these linear forms. That it's a known artifact of this kind of algorithm, but. Yeah, and I kind of like the lines because it's kind of again a kind of evolving form that you can't really control precisely, but it has this very organic look.
But are you steering one of the other parameters while they're playing?
There's actually a very slow evolution of some of the other parameters in a very simple way. They're just getting swept from one place to another, and frankly, I can't remember what they are. If you're really interested, we can. Take a look at the code later.
And you change the sensitivity of the microphone.
Right, yeah, sometimes
so
If
we are playing quietly, then he can turn the volume of the microphone up so that they still catch what we are doing. And if we play loud, you turn them down, that's what I guess.
Right, sometimes, yeah.
I ask not out of academic interest, but because I think the parts that were most interesting for me were the more contrapuntal parts. Where there wasn't such an obvious correspondence between what the instruments were doing and what the visuals were doing. And I just wondered what hand you had in that, or if that was an algorithmic thing, or what.
The only thing I was doing in the first piece was changing the gains, again to try to adjust to Chris and Lothar's activity. And again, I can turn things off if I want, so usually, again, this is, you can never get a perfect situation for this kind of thing, right? The two mics pick up, both musicians every once in a while, and also there's also a lot of randomness in the system itself, and so yeah, it's what we see a lot of times, what we see, on the screen, and we think that's what's happening. At least, when I make tests, I think I see what's happening, but it might not. It might be something else because there's just so much going on. And I tested the software with a solo trumpet, actually Birgit Uhle's, one of Birgit Uhle's solos, which is one of my favorite tests. So it's essentially it's stereo, but then there's one source really, and even then a lot of times the two flocks will go out of sync, not a huge amount, and just from the jitter in the two channels,
So you mean one instrument playing and they go out of sync? Is that what you're saying?
Because it's two channels.
Yeah, it's two channels. So if you have if you have a stereo recording of a solo instrument even, and so just a slight difference between the two, will cause the flux to diverge. Because a lot of times, they're actually more synchronized, but then there's enough randomness in the system that happens.
What about the lines at the end of the first piece? Because some lines became more and more dense.
So is it this piece or the piece after this? Okay. Again, that's people have observed this. It's an artifact of the algorithm, and it's not clear why this is happening. The people who study this kind of thing, I'm really not really an expert in the mathematics of this kind of system, because it's a very complex system, and people have published mathematics on this. But it's something that's observed in when people write these flocking simulations, and there are a lot of different variations of the flocking algorithm I've seen. That where you see these patterns, like you see circles and these line things, and there are people who try to hide this. So, for example, Kyle's original code was actually in 3 dimensions, and he has this very cloud-like look to it, and it doesn't. But then when I flatten it to make it run faster, the lines become really obvious, and I like that because I kind of like. I think of these animations a lot as drawing, so it's nice to have the line, the structure, and then the structure breaks up. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about the first piece after the intermission, and then so that's probably the technically the more interesting of let's see, where is it? Okay. So what this is actually it's a fluid simulation. So for example, if you have a pan of liquid, get some water or whatever, and then you sprinkle some dirt or little particle of salt in the liquid, and then you stir it. It moves in a really organic looking way, very natural looking way. And that's kind of what the software is doing. And I really like these kind of very organic movements. So what's going on here is, so for example, I can drop things into the liquid. So for example, I drop this, right? And then when I stir it, you can see the cursor, right? You can see what I'm doing, right? So when I stir it, it's like, it has this very fluid-like movement, okay? And that's what it's doing, okay? That's the basis for this whole thing. And then there are a lot of things you can do. I can use this as a drawing program, for instance. I can draw things. Ooh, what happened here? Oh, okay, sorry. That's the, I can draw things. And then the thing is, these shapes that I draw, they basically become particles that, that are dropped into the liquid. And so I can make like big gestures like this, and I can cause the particles to, to actually. So I have these, gravity type things that suck things in, and you can just manipulate this. And so another thing I like to do is, so the images are really just, particles. So when you look at the pixel level. So I can actually make these particle clumps congeal into images. Okay, and then they drop back into the fluid. And the different types of images that sometimes people don't see the image. I don't know whether the image is pretty obvious this time. Yes.
The skull.
The skull. Well, yeah, the skull is always really obvious, but so I try not to use that so much. And then the other things you can do with the image. Again, the image is just basically a particle. And but that's the main, that's mainly what's going on, in that piece. And it's very hard, I found anyway, to actually connect this to automatically to audio input, and have it not just go nuts or do something that I really hate, or just behave nicely. It's been very hard. The versions of this that accept audio input in a very simple way. But then when I was playing tonight, usually when I use this this setup, there's no audio input, and so all the reaction is actually done by me. So. Yeah.
I was interested to know if this piece was inspired by sand drawing, because I've seen people draw with sand. It looks a lot like wind and not liquid. And I was wondering if it's really, you meant that you were inspired by liquid oriented or sand painting?
Well, the original, well, the thing is, well, what originally happened was, I was actually trying to find a way to take an image and have it morph in an organic way to a different image. But it turns out that to do this in a consistently interesting and natural looking way is very difficult. And and then I I'm not a very, directed person in my work. I do a lot of, looking around and trying different things and so and then I thought about, I like the fluid simulation. Again, it's and so that turned out to be a nice way to work with the images, to change the structure in an organic way, and so it really, the original idea was actually something quite different, and it just turned out that this is kind of interesting to work with, and but really things like when you think about the way. So you said sand flowing, like in the like quicksand, or and really all these things are just fluids of different kinds, right? And so if I tune the parameters if I change the parameters a little differently that control how the movement works, it's going to look quite different. And so, for example, the last little piece in progress, it looks a lot like snow. And again, that's really also a fluid simulation. Okay, but then when you push it in certain ways, and when you fix the parameters in certain ways, you get a slightly different look, because really, in nature, it's just
it's the same principle,
right? Yeah,
but in different form.
Right, like air moving is really a very similar principle to water flowing in a lot of ways. You're just adjusting. There are probably physicists out there who are just like, no. But the basic idea is when you think about fluid flow dynamics, it's very similar.
Can I ask what these flashes of squares are? That you're seeing? Is that like an artifact of something, or?
Yeah, they are. Oh, you mean these? Let's see.
You said that it was more active before, but they were like representations of the grid kind of flying by.
Right. That's.
You can see them there. There.
Yeah, that is an artifact. It's and I haven't been able to get rid of the artifact. Okay, so this is being streamed, right? So a lot of people are probably like, but anyway. What I think is happening is, it's kind of distracting sometimes. So it's, so I have a way to get rid of them, clear things quickly. And I think we just saw a square here, but it's over there. Oh, there it is. Okay. So to get this thing to run fast enough, and really there's something like a maximum of like 200,000 particles in here, and it's Java, so it's not very fast. So to get it to run fast, I use this trick that's used a lot in image processing. So what you do is, instead of, this grid is 800 by 600 pixels. So I divide the grid into squares. And so I only calculate what's going on in the square if the particle is in it. Okay, so if it's a dark square, there's no point in calculating the particles moving, right? You're just wasting time. So what that means is, I think, sometimes, you'll have particles trapped on the edge of squares, and they don't get updated. Or, you can set the, and it's not just, an empty square doesn't get updated. Usually, if a square has very, very few dots in it, I don't update, because it's wasting my time. If you have 2 dots in a square, you're not gonna see it, okay? So the problem is if you have, there's a lot of movement here, right, that I cannot control in all detail. So if something starts flowing into a square, but there's too few dots in it, it's gonna get trapped in there, maybe, okay? And so sometimes it gets displayed, and I think that's what's going on. But I should really spend more time fixing that. But you know, I have new pieces to make. You know, I have a lot more ideas that I want to realize, and you know, I don't have time to, you know, fix this problem. Some people don't mind that, so I guess
Yeah,
that's
it's
my
nice.
that's my excuse that, you know, for being lazy, you know, about fixing this, because people have said, no, don't, you know, it looks fine, but I don't know. Sometimes it annoys me. So yeah, but that's what that is. Yeah.
So you're really solving the equation that govern the motion of fluids or gases or whatever in real time on your computer?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
It's actually, okay, the code base is from Glenn Murphy. Again, you know, it doesn't run very fast. So I had to take it apart and make it, it's not totally accurate. Okay, there's several fluid simulations that you can use out there. Okay, it depends on what you're trying to do. Okay, so Glenn's is not totally accurate, which is fine. Again, you know, yeah, and also, you know, to do this right, it's not going to run very fast. You have to play dirty tricks, like, you know, what I was saying. So, yeah, but it's a fluid simulation.
Yeah, at the beginning I was just wondering whether it was the fluid that was yeah, moving constantly in a way, and you just dropped the little parts of dirt in it, and there was no back reaction by the fluid, but later I saw that really there was something also going on with the underlying background material, and then I was wondering whether the fluid equation is really solved in real time or not. But
yeah, it is in real time. And in the beginning, there's no the fluid is completely still.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and then when I stir it, it moves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then and the way I handle the control is actually, again, it's actually totally inaccurate. The ways, you know, that I've worked with a more natural way, a more accurate way of dealing with the control. Because usually, if you stir something and you stop, you know, it's gonna slow down and it's gonna die out. Right? And also, you know, when you stir something, you know, if you have if your particles are really light, then they should, you know, the number of particles you have should not affect the movement. Like they should all, you know, be carried by the fluid. But then something I do, and this is probably getting into too much detail here, but you know, the things I do that are completely unnatural, for example, you know, having more particles will encourage the fluid to move because it looks better, I found. So, you know, if you have a dense mass of particles, for example, if you have a dense mass of particles, and then I, you know, encourage this to move in, you know, in the big motion. You know, it looks nice, right? Whereas, you know, if you have a really natural fluid simulation, you know, you may not get a lot of movement. Okay, I'm actually cheating because, you know, with the tablet I can, you know, cause, you know, a bigger or a smaller movement. But so things like that. Again, you know, it's not. So the once you set the fluid in motion, I can it will. There are parts that will just keep moving. I cannot tell, right? There's nothing on this that actually, you know, tells me which part of the fluid is moving in what way. And so, you know, I have to improvise with it, really. Yeah, so it's, you know, I'm actually, you know, working with the movement and you know, when I see something I don't like, I try to stop it or I try to push it in a different way. Yeah, but it's, again, you know, there's a lot of randomness in the system. So yeah, you see, it's you know, if I just leave it, you know, it's gonna do stuff on its own that I can't really. It evolves in ways that, you know, I cannot predict. Right, I'm not sure at all. And you know, in a natural fluid simulation, you know, that's not supposed to happen, right? Things don't kind of, you know, it should just kind of slow down and then they would stop, you know, more or less. Okay. But then, you know, see, this just keeps doing stuff by itself because of the, you know, inaccurate things I'm doing here, and because they happen to, you know, look kind of interesting. So.
And what about the second piece, the one with the spots and lines?
Okay, that's probably the simplest piece. You know, it's probably kind of fun in terms of the visual design, and you know, I tried to make it really, really annoying. But yeah, this, you know, the flickering look is it's kind of annoying, right? Yeah. So there are actually several sections that you know, I can control how active it is, but all it responds to is, you know, when you stop playing, when you stop playing. That's really all it is. So this is the most, the simplest. Okay, but again, you know, it will do things on its own, right? You can't completely control all the details, but you know, that's the kind of system I enjoy working with. So it will stabilize if you, right? Okay.
What's this kind of scanning thing that's happening? You see,
Right.
do you see what it's usually
Yeah.
going from top to bottom? What is that?
I think it's something to do with it not being able to keep up with the frame rate. I think.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very odd. I've never seen this in my other animations, even though, you know, I tend to push things pretty hard. But maybe, you know, because it's you know, because the structure is really simple here, you know, it's easy for us to see it. And whereas, you know, with the you know, if you have, you know, a big cloud of dots, you know, then you don't really notice that things are scanning like that, right? Yeah, I think this is the only piece I've put together where that has these kind of solid color bars, so that becomes kind of obvious. But it's kind of like, you know, a bad TV set, right? But, or yeah. But that's, you know, again, this is a very simple piece. So.
I didn't find it simple to play with that one actually.
Yeah.
Because the other two there, it was easy to communicate with for me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With that piece, I did choose to more or less not take too much notice of it. Because the structure goes on even when I stop,
Right.
and kind of there's a rhythm in it that makes it
Right.
kind of difficult,
Right.
which is difficult to control as well, or not to control for me. You know, we can stop, and then that thing goes on for another, I don't know,
Right.
10 seconds.
Right. Yeah,
Which I didn't mean I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't try to relate too much to the picture. I was more playing music without thinking, oh yeah, there is now a beat. You know.
Right. Yeah. It's actually that's an interesting. You know, I'm never sure what people will think of this because when I put this together, I had two very specific sounds in mind, really. One of them is like a percussive sound, like. Okay, so you have, you know, you have the attack, and then, you know, you have the tail, and then it goes away, right? Then the other sound is more kind of, you know, when you do this, when you go. Something like that, you know, you get this kind of rough, timbre that evolves, you know, I can't really do it, you know, you guys can, but, you know, and then you have this kind of, you know, I you know, usually, you know, I think about this kind of flickering, you know, visual stimulus, and it should be kind of annoying, and then it changes, and, you know, quickly, but in ways that you can't really predict, and those are kind of the two sounds that I had in mind, but you know,
it's still going on now.
Yeah, because that's picking us up. So, yeah, you know, if I just. Okay, so now it's stable. Okay, so this is the section where you know, the things never go away, but you see the stability, right? It is actually a stable state here. The colors will change, but really, you know, nothing is, you know, but that's it. And then we can go to the, well, we have no game here.
part of the improvisation with the musicians, or to be the kind of visual of the music. But most of all, maybe in the first piece it was different, but in, for example, this piece with the bars, for me there was no interaction visible. You know, there was something happening, but it had no relation to the music at all. And for me, I wished in the moment of the concert that there was more interaction. For example, I mean, now you showed us as the piece or how the piece functioned. So maybe it would have been more nice that the musicians just played to sound of the whole piece, and then it works for itself, like a system, like a first trigger. Like for
You
example,
simplify the music material.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure. I understood the. I think I lost the question. I'm sorry, but let me talk for like 30 seconds, and then let me know. I'm really addressing
No,
the concern here.
You know, my question was, or my intention was to ask if you had in mind that the visual piece which happens is the piece, and the music is just the trigger. It's not important which kind of music runs to the piece or what kind of music the musicians really do, because it's just a trigger, and the visuals are not related to it at all. It's just, it takes just one random trigger and then it works, because there was this circle or this just beeping like a rhythm, and for me it has a musical structure, but it's not related to the music which was in the room at that moment, because there was no interaction. For example, when the musicians did a pause, there was no pause in the picture. It runs over and over and over.
But that depends on the section it's in, actually.
Of course.
But,
But even when the musicians then did a pause and play again, the visuals will just stay as it was before. And my idea was more to have an interaction, to be the visuals, be part of the music, or the other way. That the music could be a part of the visuals, but then there has to be more of a combination, you know? Because the bars, for example, for me, are standing for very electronic musical sounds, like sine waves or something like this, because you have the same, more or less the same effect as the bars when you have old monitors and you just put in a audio signal. It's the same thing, and for me, it could be more interesting if it more reacts with the music, because we had the piece a longer times had more drones or more drony sounds, and the visuals just did something, but it was a contrapoint or something different or the same. It was just beeping like a dance rhythm. Reminds me more on electronic dance music at that point.
We're talking only about the second piece, yeah?
Yeah, with the bars.
Right, I agree. The second piece is really a very simple piece, and it was actually, like I said, it was really designed with two sounds in mind, and I was never sure whether people would enjoy playing with it, but and in fact the first time I played we did the second piece in San Francisco. It was with Gino Rivera, the percussionist, and Birgit Uhlen, and it was actually designed with a little bit of what they do in mind. And so Gino starts out by hitting this very resonant tube. So it goes bing, and then you see the thing throb, right? So and then he goes bing again, it goes throb, 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 and then Birgit does this like very simple gestures on off, and then it does, so it goes on up, you see very clear changes. But, yeah, again, it's really, the design is actually very specific, and I'm never sure whether, it's gonna, work that well, and I hate to, tell the musicians, this is what I had in mind when it was, I didn't tell you guys, this much about the piece, right?
I don't think it's the most simple piece, it's the most difficult piece.
Uh-huh. And the thing is,
the other two, it was easy to play. It was just beautiful, and it was, I could relate to it. And, the last piece you were, it was like an improvisation, another dimension. And the first piece, it's just beautiful. But the second piece, like if I would play it now again, I would know much more what to do. Now, after talking about it.
Yeah, I think also just a little footnote on that. I actually, I think it's important to have the connection between the sound and the visuals. One should see, when the sound changes. Let's say when there's some, event that catches our ear, that something happens in the visuals. But then I think if that happens all the time, it's also a problem, I think. For me anyway, it's also a problem. I get very tired of that. And so, I like things where, sometimes the visuals will just do things on their own for a little bit. And then when there's a, special event, then it's like, oh, it wakes up and does something different. But, it's, I think conceptually it's a very simple piece with a very simple design in mind. And, I'm never sure whether people will enjoy, playing with it or listening to, or watching it, listening to the combination. So.
Can I ask a question concerning the first piece? At the beginning, I tried to find out whether there's some simple relation between, some really simple relation between the music and the stuff going on in the visuals. So, for instance, high pitch, many dots, or something like that. It's really easy, and that was not the case as far as I observed. So, and the question to the musicians would be: did you find out some sort of relation, some sort of pattern that you could use for playing then? Can you describe that in a way? So maybe
there was a big, stimulation and a big. I didn't know in detail what to expect, what was happening, but it was always relating to what I was doing. It was always different from. I didn't know, what to do to make the. I was the red one, to make it go up or to go down, but like birds. You don't know where they're flying, but but it was relating to what I was doing, and it was very clear to me. It was just not. I couldn't make it do something, but I enjoyed that. But it was definitely very strongly related to what I was doing. I enjoyed that piece the most. I mean, also the last, after the interval. That piece, but that was different because you were actually playing. And the first piece, it was the computer was playing it, and you were interfering a little bit with something. But I thought that was really, I love that piece, that first piece.
Chris, what do you think?
Well, we actually could control elements. I mean, there's bleed with the mics, but there's if you can bring the birds in and out. And obviously, if you keep playing, they keep doing stuff. And if you don't like the shape of what's going on, you can stop playing. Of course, the mic is still picking up other stuff, but you can kind of affect it a little bit. But not, you don't know where it's going to go or not. You can, in a way, you can control density. And Lothar did that a few times where I was playing, and he went, "Boop," and he was bringing stuff in because we were playing quietly enough that it wasn't really being picked up by the other mics. So there was some control, but I don't know how much I was interested in creating, flashing birds That's not the interesting part of the piece, it's more seeing how they evolve. But it's interesting, if you play a short sound, they go away very quickly, but if you play for a little bit longer, they take a while to dissipate, just like a flock. So if you're playing for a long time and there's still a lot of sound, then you stop, it didn't go away immediately, it hung for a little bit, it kind of faded. But if it was just a second or two of the sound, it would go away much faster. So there's a little general control thing. I felt actually, when we were rehearsing it, it wasn't so good and when we were practicing it, but I kind of felt the piece was a bit strong, and we even got a sense of form in that one. Out of the three events, the three musical things tonight, the first one was maybe, for me, the most, it's starting to resemble something that seemed a little planned, I have to say, even the ending, it seemed to come to a point. Because I didn't know if that would happen with these, you don't know what the computer's gonna do, you know, if it's gonna end on like a dumb circle or something, you know, and then, yeah. It worked out pretty well last night. But can I say one thing as a player? There's nothing wrong with telling people that I want two sounds, or two types of sounds, because it's your piece, and I want to make it, this is not my normal music that I'm making here. And so I want to make the event the best possible. So if you need a high E and then a low multi-fine, you should tell people what they need, because it's about, and we have a lot of freedom, but there's certain things that make it go. You know, it's a player also. And you know, there's that player you play with who is really inflexible, but he's a really good bebop player. So then you try to go to his playing style, and in a way that's kind of, you have to accommodate the piece. So I don't mind if you said, avoid long tones, or whatever, or told me only long tones, because that's what, it's really about also courting the computer a little bit, about making it, unless you kind of don't care how it comes across. But you want to bring out, I mean, it's like a growing plant, you kind of want to give the right conditions for it to really blossom, you know? So I know there's a weird thing sometimes in improvising, seeing people being told what to do, but you could say, you can do what you want, but if you do these three things, it'll be a stronger piece. I think people I wouldn't have minded if you had.
I think, but that was easy to understand in the first piece, or not? You know,
Yeah,
for
but like
example,
this
when
flash,
you just
we
said-
understood a little bit of the gating stuff, but he could really just say, this is what I want you to do, can we
Yeah.
divide up two sounds?
It was, for me, it was easier to just, without him saying anything, to understand that for the first piece. You know, like, for example, what you said, I stop, that means that the red color will kind of disappear for a moment, and I was playing with that, you know?
Yeah, it was more
And-
clear
but
with that
with the
piece.
second piece, I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah, but I think that's a piece that limitations may have helped, made the music
Yeah,
stronger. If
you're
it was
right.
really minimal
That's what I
material.
said, what I know when afterwards, if I would play it now again, I would play it differently.
Yeah.
Now, having more information about it.
Yeah, but I think also, Bill, I mean, sorry, you're the composer here a little bit, and so you can dictate the material. I think it would help, you know.
No, I didn't mind. You know, again, you know, I'd like to, you know, see what people do with it as well. So, I mean, okay, if we were making a recording, I'd probably say, okay, you know, make this short sound here, please, Chris, you know, and nobody do anything, you know, for 2 minutes, and then make another short sound or something like that, and then you do this long gesture. But then, you know, it's fun to see what people, you know, do with it, and you know, I learn new things about, you know, what it's doing too, and its limitations. So.
Yeah, I'm not anti-fun.
Well, maybe we should wrap up, perhaps. Michael, what do you think?
Yes, you like it.
Okay. Well, we'll be tearing down a little bit. Actually, I'll be tearing. I don't really want us to tear down, but you know, I'm happy to talk more. So thanks for